Alright, so to wind down from the last video that I just made, which was a freaking... I'm not gonna curse that early. It was an insane video. It was absolutely... It's insane, alright? If you haven't watched it, if it hasn't been taken down, I took a big fucking risk making that video. Because it's probably gonna get taken down. I'm not gonna hold you. But I say, you know what? F it. You know, let's go for it. Video probably is taken down by now, but if it's not, go and check it out now. It's the Sidemen video. It has nothing to do with this, right? It was just a fun, low video, you know, but we're back to some more serious, some more educational. We're here with Second Thought, okay? Back at it. Not the first video. We watched the other one, which was, Is Capitalism a Dystopia? Some shit like that. I think that was the video that I watched. I'm looking at that Veritasium video right there, which seems interesting. I watch that one right after this one if I can. But I don't have anything else to say. Why would anyone work under socialism? By second thought, I know this channel, kind of known for pushing, you know, more leftist ideas. I believe. I think they're trying to, I don't know if I would call it a push. I guess maybe it'd be better if I would just say educating about, like, communism and socialism. But it seems like they definitely do advocate for it. That's what it seems like to me. Which, if that's the case, all power to you. I don't give a fuck. People can believe whatever they want to believe in. They can want to push whatever they want to push. Don't care. But I guess I can't. It's not that I don't care. Like, I'm not going to learn about it. Like, I'm going to go learn about it. I want to be educated. But whatever people believe in, whatever they want, I'm not one of those people that say, yeah, those communists, those socialist scum fuckers. No. We accept everybody around here. We accept every idea. If you think there's a bad idea, you don't cancel them. You don't deplatform them. I'm with Joe Rogan on this in a lot of ways. You don't silence people. If you think that somebody has a bad idea, you know what you do with that? You respond with an even better idea that's going to neutralize that idea. It's going to pummel it. It's going to destroy it. How do you deal with bad ideas? With better ideas. With better stuff. And then you go, you debate them, make better content. You don't agree with second thought, make better content than them. Saying the opposite. Saying how great capitalism is. Saying whatever. Don't just try to deplatform motherfuckers. That shit is lame as fuck. But anyway. What the hell did I do? Hello. What the fuck did I do? What is this? Okay. What the hell is...
This episode and
I told you. Watch the Sidemen video. It got crazy. Okay? Let's go. Watch the Sidemen video.
This
I hope it wasn't
episode
taken
and
down.
others like it are brought to you by the generous support of my patrons on Patreon. If you'd like to help support my channel, get early access to every video, plus access to our patrons-only Discord server, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/secondthought.
Oh, I don't have money to become a Patreon.
What is socialism? If you answered sticking it to your dad, you're absolutely right. That's
Yes,
what
sir.
really matters.
Sticking it
Never
to the
lose
dad.
sight of that. But believe it or not, there is more to it. Socialism is a
Really?
fundamentally different project for society. A society organized around a different economic model. With that much at stake, it's natural to wonder how such a society would work. And because it's the topic of this video, how this society would work. Currently, we don't live under that economic model, of course. We live under capitalism, a system in which a small minority of people privately own the vast majority of all productive resources. Companies, factories, stuff like that. They own the tools, so to speak, to make stuff. This ownership over the so-called means of production, the means required to produce, allows capitalists to put other people to work. That way they make a nice little profit. Or a big, humongous, I feel like buying Twitter today kind of profit, regardless of whether they work or not. Socialists have a different idea of profit.
That's crazy to watch this all unfold. I'm actually just glad that I'm consciously alive sometimes. In this day and age, sometimes just being consciously alive and seeing shit unfold, if you're gonna do it without value judgments, just sitting back here like this on my chair, right? Watching it all unfold, it really is a movie. It really is a game. It really is an interesting experience. I don't know why anybody would want it to want it to not be the case. I don't know why people don't want to be here sometimes. It's so great. It's so beautiful. When you're making any value judgments, it's just an experience. Don't want to Put a label on it. Why? Like, look at this. This is crazy. This is something straight out of a movie. Elon Musk really bought Twitter. I had forgotten about that. I really had forgotten about that.
Regardless of whether they work or not. Socialists have a different idea of how things should be run. Instead of concentrated and individual ownership over the means of production, ownership should be collective. That way, whatever we produce by working, we could redistribute amongst ourselves, or use to do cool stuff like, I don't know, what if nobody lived on a concrete slab right next to cars and sewer water? Crazy ideas like that. But capitalists like to keep their profits more than they like doing cool stuff, so that's pretty much where the story ends. And where does it end with you socialists?
That's true.
First you want to treat the homeless like they're people, now you're telling me you want everyone to have guaranteed shelter, food, medical care, and education? I don't think so. If people aren't fearing for their life at least once a day, why would anyone ever want to work? How would we get anything done and guarantee these things you're promising to everyone? And you know what? That's actually a really good question. Let's spend about 15 minutes trying to answer it. The first piece of the puzzle we need to look at is work under our current system, capitalism.
Okay.
That's because socialism is not a perfect utopian society where everyone is happy all the time. Socialism will have its limitations. And in order to properly assess those limitations, we have to compare them to the kinds of limitations we're currently facing in our resplendent capitalist economy.
There's no perfect.
For starters, how does
There's no perfect, but I've searched up economic systems. I've searched up economic models, and I always had the question, right? Why do we only ever talk about capitalism and socialism? It seems like those, like, just like a Democrat Party, like with that same dynamic or paradigm, it's like kind of like the polls, you know, when you're gonna go vote. Seems like the only things on there are Republican and Democrat. Of course, we know why that is. Companies, they're on company payroll. People are paying for their campaigns, and they're doing so because those people that are paying them know that they're gonna pass laws and legislation or whatever. They're gonna be somehow in control, right? Money really is the powerhouse here in America, right? If you have the most money, you're also that. Also, if you're the scientist that tells people what knowledge to have, how to think, and all of that, that's what they say is the most powerful person around here in America, who can tell people what to think and how they perceive themselves as people, how they perceive life, and all of that. But that's neither here nor there, right? Like, basically, there's, you know, only when you go vote, you only see you'd have to dig deep to find a third-party candidate. You'd have to dig deep to find out who the fuck that Libertarian, Green Party, these motherfuckers, right? You'd have to dig to find out who any of them even are, to find out that they're even running. Like, have you guys heard of a third? I haven't heard of a third-party candidate. It's not like I really keep up with that shit, but I haven't heard of any third-party candidate running. Ever. I've never, like, seen their ad campaigns. Like, ever. All I ever see is Democrat or Republican. And just like that, in a similar fashion, all I ever had seen was socialism and capitalism. And then I always wondered, is there anything else? Is there some other system? Well, there's like other systems that have been proposed, but it seems maybe, I haven't looked too much into it, maybe these are the only two best working ones, the only two that could actually ever work. Maybe the others just crumble in on themselves, I don't know. But if you go to Wikipedia page, they have a whole Wikipedia page on them, and they have a bunch of systems. It's not just socialism. Well, I guess, you know, socialism is also a bit, you know, complicated, because like where's the line being drawn between that and communism and this and that? It's kind of complicated, but I know that there's more to it than this. I don't think it should be so black and white, so polarizing. You know, oh, so, you know, this left versus right. I was like, where's the north and the south wing? Where's the other wings? Why can't we have more diversity? It's better when it's more diverse. Therefore, you don't have such a polarization of ideas. You know, and maybe some, not in America. I mean, it would take a long time. Nope. That's the one thing about an economic system is that this way people don't really care to it too much. I think one of the reasons why is talking about this stuff. It's never gonna change really in your lifetime. Like, it's cool to learn and educate yourself about socialism, but here in America, we're not gonna see a change in like our whole entire lifetimes. Like, let's be real, it's impossible, and it's not nobody would ask for them to do so either, because such a drastic change in an economic system would fuck everything up. It's not a good idea. Nobody is calling for an immediate change of capitalism to socialism. Like, no, if anybody is calling for that, they do not know what they're calling for. They don't know what they're talking about. You cannot do that. This goes very deep. This is super fundamental to the way everything works. Like, you can't just have capitalism one day and have socialism the other. Like, if you were to study these things, maybe let's try it out in like some other country that's not so big, that's a bit smaller or something like that. Let's see how they can do it. And then maybe for the future, if we see that they've had success, maybe we can slowly start making that, small sort of residual kind of gradual change, over time. And that's how any sort of change like that would have to come to be. It's a slow change over time. That's
Capitalism
what I know.
incentivizes
That's
work.
where
A
my
big way
knowledge
capitalists incentivize people to do stuff is by imbuing work with innate value. You might have heard this called the Protestant work ethic before. Capitalist cultures have all assimilated the idea that work is good in and of itself. No matter how degrading, punitive, boring, or evil, it's morally...
And of course they'd have that, because they need that. This is not even just like the people on top telling this to the people that are working for them, slaving away. This is the people slaving away amongst each other, telling them each other this, because they kind of need to believe that. I mean, they're doing slave work. They're like, dude, this shit is fucking sucks. I don't want to be doing this, but I need to be doing this, and they need to tell themselves something that is gonna make it easier for them to keep doing it. And it's like, well, diligence, Being somebody that believes that just working hard is right and it's virtuous and it's a good thing to do. Working hard. Yeah. And that's how you can get people to shh and not question anything and just keep doing what they're doing quietly, and they can be content enough to then go and go back to work the next day,
Good to work and morally bad not to work. Better to be the CEO of a company dumping waste into a local river than to be one of those lazy poor people. At least the executive is out there doing something. This innate belief in the value of work is what makes the sentence "get a job" so universally recognizable to all of us. But there are a lot of people for whom this kind of cultural pressure doesn't work very well. So the other, more significant way capitalism gets people to work is through material coercion. You are not guaranteed a minimum standard of living under capitalism. So it's either you work or you starve. You work or you can't make rent. You work or you're at the mercy of an unfortunate medical surprise. It's a brutal way to organize labor in a society. But the theory is that even though it's bad, at least it'll get our society to be as productive as possible. And overall,
and you can
that
make
will mean
technological
that we'll maximize
advancements.
human potential. Millions
Look
may
at all
be
the
destitute,
technological
but hey,
advancements we're making. Sheesh! Look at all of that shit. But at what cost? When are we gonna have the think tank? I want to set up a think tank sometime. Anybody out there watching this, you got enough money? Let's create a think tank. My idea. Let's do it. Let's create a think tank out there that we can place people somewhere. Well, we'll have some of the greatest minds. We'll have systems that go about choosing these people. We'll have a nice system that we can choose, a nice rigorous system where we're going to choose the best of the best thinkers, most open-minded, and very diverse, hopefully. People to go in there and they're going to talk about stuff. They're just gonna think. They're just gonna debate each other on stuff, on what type of systems might be best, on what we could do, blah blah blah. When can we have a think tank? Do those even exist anymore? Do we have one of those? And you gotta watch out too, because somebody's probably gonna come in there and try to infiltrate somebody. If that were to happen, somebody's gonna try to infiltrate it, right? Somebody's gonna send in like a rat or a spy in there to go and just completely delegitimize the whole operation. They're gonna have a guy going in there who is gonna be making some wild claims, who is just like completely way over his head, right? Some crazy shit that is just like amoral or like it's wrong, everybody knows it, like some stupid shit, and it's gonna completely delegitimize the whole operation, right? But I think it's still worth it, right? You gotta have a nice system for that can maybe work against that. You gotta have some nice open-minded people. I'd be willing to go in there if I just study a little more, if I understand some of these systems a bit better, to go and be in the think tank, to go and discuss and talk about what kind of stuff, what kind of systems are, how could this like very abstract things, the very fundamental things, even like are we using the best systems possible? Right? Because of course there's never going to be a perfect system, but it's like, can we get an even better one? Can we get one that's even better for people, right? Like this one's good if you're only worried about, technological advancement and I guess efficiency, but it's also like, what if not everybody's really down for just technological advancement and efficiency? What if people are not really down for that if it means slaving away their whole lives? What if people aren't down for that shit? Of course, there's also freedom to, actually go up the chain and get paid a lot more and then maybe become one of those top guys. someday, but that's a big maybe because not everybody's going to become one of those top guys just from working hard. People work very hard out here. And just because they work hard does not mean they're becoming those top guys. There's not enough room for that, you know? So it's like, that's something to consider. Could there be better systems? And let me just shut the fuck up because I'm talking too much.
We got the lines.
The video's as long as the whole video. How do I manage to talk this much? I'm so sorry.
Touch.
Jesus
Except
Christ.
it doesn't work. Capitalism doesn't maximize productivity or human potential, even by its own standards. In the US, there are more people that are unemployed than there are jobs for them to do. While you may have heard that there are more jobs in the economy than people to fill them, especially during the quote, Great Resignation, that's not strictly speaking, what's the word? True? Most news outlets use the government's preferred data on unemployment, a number that is usually pretty low because when that number is low, it looks good. The most commonly used number on unemployment is called the U3, and the reason it shows a relatively low rate of unemployment, one that makes Americans look lazy when there are all those good jobs out there, is because it flat out doesn't include a lot of people that it really should. Excluded from the U3 unemployment rate are people who are underemployed, marginally attached to the workforce, meaning they want to and can work but aren't looking anymore, or that are categorized as discouraged. All people who in one way or another easily fall into the unemployed category, but aren't counted as such. But that's not all.
Discouraged from
Sometimes
working.
the unemployment number will be even lower than that because the government just counts wrong. As a result, when you try to actually count up how many people are really unemployed by adding up those who are miscategorized, unemployed, or underemployed, you get a much bigger number. 26.8 million people. Way more people than there are jobs to fill. What does this mean? Well, it means that millions of people are being hit with a stick and promised a carrot that many of them will mathematically never get the chance to eat. We are subjecting millions of people to crushing poverty, without guaranteed housing, healthcare, or adequate food on the theory that it'll get them to work, despite knowing full well that we don't have the room in our job market to accommodate them all. It's misery for misery's sake. And this is completely contradicting the idea that capitalism can maximize human potential. That's because maximizing human potential doesn't maximize profits. It is more profitable for our companies to overwork some people, according to one study, about 1 in 3 Americans, and have a separate, unemployed pool of people in a desperate living situation, ready to accept just about any job for very low pay. Our governments care more about how profitable an
stress. That's serious. That's fucking serious. That's a big issue.
Economy is than putting that profit to good use. So this reserve army of labor is perpetually maintained. If governments solved poverty, they would hurt profits. And that's what's most important to them. But that's for the unemployed. Those who escape unemployment aren't making it into some hallowed sanctuary of regalia and pleasure. Most Americans don't like their jobs. That may seem subjective, but according to Gallup, 66% of Americans are either not engaged or actively disengaged from their job. We might call that kind of feeling alienation. The way Gallup comes up with these numbers is by getting yes or no responses to basic statements like, "At work, I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day." Or, "At work, my opinions seem to count." Or, "The mission or purpose of my company makes me feel my job is important." And even basic bottom-of-the-barrel statements like, "My supervisor or someone at work seems to care about me as a person." Why are so many people unable to answer these questions in the affirmative? It's because the jobs we're working and the context in which we're working them aren't built with human needs in mind. We aren't working for ourselves or our community. We are working to make someone else wealthier, not to become more fulfilled people, not to improve the lives of the people we love, just to put another buck in someone else's pocket and get enough of a kickback to pay for the things we need and maybe a couple things we want. We are alienated from work, and that means we can only ever see it as a sacrifice of our time. For the thing that takes up most of our waking hours, that's a problem. So what about socialism?
It's true.
As a refresher, socialism is a society where the means of production are owned collectively, and basic needs are guaranteed to all unconditionally. For any theory heads in the crowd, here we're talking specifically about lower-phase communism.
No, but it's so complicated, man. People say, it's a driving force. Desperation is a driving force. Look at all the best boxers out here. All the best boxing champions come straight out of fucking drop-dead poverty. Like, they come from straight poverty. A lot of people that are the hungriest. Look at the boxers. Look at all these people. Look at all these motherfuckers that are working the hardest, that are the most hungry, that are the most committed. Tony Robbins talks about it too. He's just like, there's so many intelligent people that can't work their way out of a paper bag. It's hunger that really does this, and we all love that story of a man who comes all the way from the bottom, right? We love that story. But how many people do you think come from the bottom, but they stay at the bottom because, well, there's just so much, like, unbelievable amount of shit, unsurmountable amounts of shit on top of them. I mean, like I said, like Joe Rogan, I think he has a pretty good look on it. I don't want to mention him too much, but it's like he says it. He's just like, so many people say, "Oh, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, do this, work. Look at me, I worked, and I'm fine, I'm well off. Work." It's like, well, look at what he's saying. What if there's not enough jobs out there? Well, like, if for you in your area, maybe, sure, you can, I can go on Indeed right now, find a few job openings. I probably won't get them. Probably won't get like 0.01%. I'll probably only be able to get like 0.01% of those, right? Because, I mean, there's also requirements. A lot of people that are at the bottom, they don't have any of those. They don't have education. They have shitty education, shitty environment, shitty family members. Everything's just shitty. It's all shitty because everything's connected, and they're starting from so low. They don't even have boots, man. They don't even have boots to pull up them from the bootstraps. They don't even have those. A lot of people really don't. And yes, like the exceptions do prove the rule. There are exceptions. Motherfuckers that dead ass come from nothing, come from the shittiest of spots, and they make something of themselves. Yes, you do see that happen, and in a sense, it is a driving force of productivity and work and if, like, yeah, you can get people to work. You might say people might not want to work if they can all just, if we have like universal basic income and they can afford all of their shit, no questions asked, without nothing. Yeah, not perfect, but it depends on what you have in mind. It depends on what you're prioritizing here. It depends on what matters most to you. Because yes, you can see how capitalism, there's no pros. It's not like there's no pros. There might be plenty of pros, but it's like, are those cons just way too hard hitting? Could this system, socialism or some other one, maybe have less? Maybe have different pros and cons that people would be more willing to accept. People would be like, well, I'm willing to maybe take less technological innovation. Maybe I won't have a brand new phone every year. Maybe I won't have this, and that, but maybe I'll feel better that I don't have people, slaving away at sweatshops in China because of these motherfuckers that I work for to get to make them richer and put more money in their pocket. So, and those guys having such bad conditions, so much so that they're jumping out of buildings, suiciding, and on their lunch break, like literally jumping out of buildings, to commit suicide. And it's like, it's something to think about. But of course, there's also the argument those people couldn't have any other jobs. Maybe those sweatshops really are probably the only opportunities they have. Probably are. Well then, doesn't that seem a little bit convoluted? Isn't that like not our problem? Isn't that their problem? Isn't that their country's problem? Not their problem. Their country's system's problem that they don't have a job? Like, of course, that's gonna happen when they're like, you can only change one system at a time. Not like we're gonna change the whole world, but like, let's try it. Let's try to let's try to get the best system possible. Where's the think tank to come about this, to make this happen? Where is it? Nobody's doing it. And it's like, how's that our problem though? Like, yeah, maybe sometimes those sweatshops are somebody's only job, and I don't want to say that because of course I do want to care about everybody. I do want to care about everybody possible. If it were up to me, I wish I could change their country system too, where maybe they'll have more of a chance. Where if we could change their system as well, then they'll have the same shit as us, and then that won't be a problem. There won't be a problem if we take those sweatshops away, if they can have the same system that we do, and therefore their government can be afford to provide them with their basic needs and stuff like that. But it's sounding like more fairy tales the more that you go into it. Like, yeah, it's not perfect. It's like, what do
just
you do?
To make our case as difficult as possible to defend. Anyway, how do you get people to work if all their basic needs are met? For starters, there's just going to be less work that needs to be done by everyone. Convincing people to spend 4 or 5 hours on a job instead of 8 is already making things easier. With fewer jobs that exist only to drive up profit for capital owners, and by eliminating the artificial work scarcity capitalism produces, we can greatly reduce the amount of time people spend working. The incentives a capitalist society follows lead it to overwork one chunk of society, while sustaining another group of immiserated people who do not work despite wanting to. In contrast, in a society where everyone has democratic power over economic decisions, the most likely outcome is to divide work equitably, hence less work per person. This reduction in working hours would also be helped by automation, which wouldn't face the same resistance as it does under capitalism. Under capitalism, workers are disincentivized from advocating for more automation because it threatens to rob them of their job, which they need to live. Capitalists are also disincentivized from automating jobs away because it's not very difficult.
Man, are robots really going to help us in a lot of cases? Because sometimes I see people working such shitty jobs that I know I wouldn't like to do myself. And I see them working those. It's not like I have a great job either. I mean, you guys, you know what I do? I take out recycling bags and I clean an office. And I do that willfully. I could probably look for a different job. I mean, I'm not bad socializing. I speak English. I could do a restaurant or something. And I do that job, which is technically cleaning. I do that because I can listen to my philosophy. It's quiet. It's not usually, if it's not like a hard day, it's not like back-breaking work necessarily. You know, it's decent. I'll take it, and it's quiet. That's the best part of it for me. When I'm doing my recycling thing, I'm just changing the shit. You know, just changing shit, changing bags. I can just listen to my philosophy podcast. I can listen to Joe Rogan. I can listen to whatever. I can listen to music. I can relax. And that's where I've learned the most of my philosophy is at work. While I'm working, I'm quietly listening to the Philosophize This podcast. You know, but even so, I see people that are working some really shitty jobs, man. But it's like, we do need somebody to do them. But if we did have more people advocating for automation, if we did have more people working on that tech or robots and shit like that, could this solve a problem? But then what problem? Then the problem that's going to arise is people need more jobs. Could those jobs be found somewhere else? What could we do? Could we do more social work? Could we do more? Is the metaverse going to open up those jobs? Is it going to be enough? Like, fucking hell, it's so complicated. It's so complicated. But I've always thought about that. Like, I thought robots one day, I know it's going to happen. But, like, I've always thought about that possibility that we have now, that robots are going to take over the really shitty jobs so nobody else has to do them. Like cleaning and stuff like should we really have humans out here just cleaning our trash? Should you have me out here dumping people's recycling bins into those big ass containers? Should you have me cleaning up toilets and cleaning up an office? Should you have those motherfuckers? Like, bro, this motherfuckers out there doing crazy stuff. I don't think that anybody should really be doing that. But should is a hard term, because I mean, nobody should really necessarily be doing anything. But it's like, I sometimes wish they were doing something less backbreaking. I wish they were doing something more that they love, because I mean, you heard it here. 66% of people don't like their jobs, right? Something like that.
To find someone desperate enough to do it for a lower pay.
That's a lot of people.
Building robots is expensive. Moving a job outside the imperial core is not. Under socialism, if a decent existence is not conditional on work, having machines take over your job, or at least alleviate the time and effort it takes, is a no-brainer. With a democratic model of economic decision-making, automation has much more room to develop, since it's in everyone's interest to reduce the amount of work being done. Here again, the appeal of a shorter work day or work week comes back into focus. In general, this logic of lower working hours can be applied to all sorts of jobs in a more targeted way. If a job is particularly unappealing, because it's especially physically demanding, for example, the number of hours spent on the job can be reduced in order to make it more appealing. Once again, this kind of logic runs counter to what we experience in capitalist society. Capitalism has, in most parts of the world, drifted towards a standardization of work around the 8-hour day and the 40-hour work week. That is because the driving force of work under capitalism is always maximizing the exploitation of human capacity, up to the point where the law steps in. What this means is that jobs that have no business being 8 hours long are 8 hours long just because they legally can be. Less time working is already great, but there are even better ways in which work under socialism gets incentivized. One of the big reasons your job can suck is because of who your boss is. Usually, they aren't accountable to you. There's a strict hierarchy, and odds are you're near the bottom. If you have a bad boss, there's very little you can do about it. and there's a lot they can do to make your time on the job a lot worse. As a result of the common ownership of the means of production, this kind of thing would not be a feature of socialism. Either your company's hierarchy is completely dissolved, or if some amount of hierarchy is necessary to make things run smoothly, your management would be elected by the entire body of workers like you see in some co-ops today. So you either no longer have a boss, or your boss is accountable to you, not the other way around. A better work environment, where your voice counts just as much as anybody's, is a lot more pleasant than one where you are told what to do, and you can only resist by threatening to leave the job entirely. An ultimatum that more often than not is not worth making. Overall, a less alienating job that takes up a lot less of your time and treats you like a human being with agency and not like an interchangeable cog will inevitably entice people into working in ways that current capitalist labor doesn't. After all, everything we do is work. If we can make the unpleasant things we do pleasant, we will do them because that's how we treat everything else. That's why we cook for ourselves, make our beds, and clean the counters. It's why 1 in 4 Americans volunteers. We make necessary things pleasant. Doing work with a clear result that has a demonstrable impact, where you can see progress, and where you work with other people makes people happy. Work that takes this into account, not just the bottom line, is work that is attractive. We can do that for the whole economy once we stop prioritizing profits. But admittedly, all this might not be enough. All these factors may not be sufficient incentives to produce for all our collective needs and wants. If that's the case, we might choose to add an extra incentive by rewarding some jobs better than others. Even if all your basic needs are met, you might still benefit from doing a job very few people want to do themselves. This would never lead to the staggering inequality we face today. After all, no one makes billions of dollars off a higher wage, but it would still produce some benefits for those who are willing to sacrifice more. In this lower phase of communism, the guiding principle would be, from each according to their ability, to each according to their contribution, as opposed to the more classic, from each according to their ability, to each according to their need, which we would expect from a later stage communism. It's not an ideal scenario, but again, we're not even sure it's necessary. While you'll often hear things like, why would a doctor take on such a grueling job if they only made as much as a janitor? That's not as rock solid of an argument as some may think it is. In a lower stage socialist country like Cuba, where doctors don't make especially high wages, but the health sector has been properly funded, there's an abundance of doctors. So much so that the country deploys physicians to its neighboring, oftentimes wealthier capitalist countries when they're in need. Reality does not support the idea that because a task is unpleasant or difficult, people are not drawn to it. People like doing things that matter in conditions that fulfill their needs and desires. Not only that, people don't like not doing things. If you're still wondering why people would work despite having all their basic needs met, think about what it's actually like not to work. Within just a few days, doing nothing is unbearable. We are hardwired to want to do things. Sitting passively in front of a screen all day is more punishing than it is relaxing. And with an abundance of things to do around you that benefit you directly and your community as a whole, staying inside all day is almost certainly going to be the worst option of the two. But I briefly touched on the idea of limitations earlier, so it's probably good that I actually address it before the video ends. Socialism would not be a perfect society. For example, would there still be coercion? The honest answer is maybe. So long as there is scarcity, there will almost always need to be a way to resolve disputes over how scarce resources are divided up. Scarce resources can be physical, material things, but also more abstract ideas like leisure time. Under capitalism, the decisions over how to distribute these scarce resources are made by capital owners and markets, by the competition of all against all, with the consequences of vast inequality and mass poverty we see today. Under socialism, these disputes would either be resolved through democratic means, within a company, community, or throughout society at large in some form of national assembly, or self-imposed, with the recognition that there is a want that is not being met, and with individuals taking it upon themselves to satisfy it. It's not clear how much of a role scarcity would play under socialism, given how much of the scarcity we experience today is artificial or exacerbated in order to drive up profits. But even if we imagine scarcity to be just as important a feature as it is in our current lives, there's no doubt that the socialist model is more legitimate in settling the disputes scarcity would produce. Okay, but can this system work perfectly? Here again, the honest answer is probably not. But it doesn't need to. It just needs to work better than what we have now. And better than brutal poverty, massive unwanted unemployment, and a general dissatisfaction with how we spend the bulk of our days isn't that hard to do. I mentioned at the beginning of this video that this kind of content is made possible by my patrons on Patreon. As you can probably imagine, YouTube doesn't like to promote left-wing political content. I've gotten a lot of reports recently of people not getting notified of my new videos even if they have the bell clicked. Because of this, I'm having to rely more heavily on viewers like you to maintain my channel. If you like the kind of videos I'm producing and you're able to chip in even $1 a month, I would greatly appreciate the support. As a little show of that appreciation, every patron, regardless of donation amount, gets early access to every video, plus access to our patrons-only Discord server. It's a really fun place to hang out. We have everything from a recommended reading list, to a book club, to special channels for our neurodivergent and LGBT comrades. I also try to do a live Q&A with patrons every month, which is always a good
Neurodivergent?
time.
Why do you need a separate channel for them?
We've built
I mean, it depends on how neurodivergent you are.
Great little community, and we'd love for you to be part of it. So if you'd like to help support my channel, join the Discord, and get early access to every video, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/secondthought. If you enjoyed this video, consider dropping a like. If you hated it, a thumbs.
If I hated it, I didn't hate the video. I liked it. People always misinterpreted the need for humans to keep themselves busy and engage with others with the grueling grind of working in an often useless or easy automated job. Yes, these two things were never the same, but capitalistic rhetoric drummed the wrong definition into our heads. In their eyes, not working makes you lazy, even though you could be studying a language, improving skill, or traveling the world with time saved from doing menial chores. The most compelling argument for socialism that it's already how we tend to instinctively organize on small scales. For example, within a household, chores are divided according to each person's age, time, and ability, and usually mostly without any financial incentives. If a friend or family needed urgent help with something like childcare, nursing, if they are sick, or even housing, if they become homeless, we would think of it as a decent thing to do to help them in any way that we could. And we wouldn't make it into transaction. Yes. Doing comic, TV show, games, and movie reviews with a set schedule. Oh, while teaching myself visual effects and editing. People want to do work. We want to build, create, and help others. I could have been a doctor if I would have been able to go to medical school, not for the money, but because it was something I'm interested in and wanted to help. Yeah, see, you have people like that, man. You really do. They made a lot of good arguments there. You know, I think people... Let me know what you guys think. Do you think people would work under socialism? Do you think that they would just be lazy and they would take all of their, all of their benefits, all of their shit that they can, and they're going to just roll with it. They're going to run with it, and they're going to never look back? Do you think they're just going to never work again? Do you think they're just going to sit on their ass all day? Or do you think that maybe he brought up a point? You do understand. Sometimes you don't like just sitting around. We are definitely human. I think any psychologist will tell you we like to do something. We don't like to just sit around and do nothing. I think that is very true. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you thought down below. I know I talked a little bit too much, made the video too long. I'm sorry. But if you did make it to the end somehow, some way, for some odd reason, you're the GOAT. Let me know. Leave a comment. I'll pin it. I'll like it. And yeah, let me know what you guys want me to react to next. I'll see you guys in the next video, which might be that one right there to your right. The scientist who killed millions and saved billions. Let's go.